Hey guys, good morning. Today we'll be looking at the PvP meta for this season. Since I haven't done a pretty deep dive on my RTA runs, so I'm planning to end champ once again. I need to understand what, who, and what, as well as like the current trend when it comes to like approaching the season. So a really important thing whenever you play Epicseven, especially in RTA, is knowing what each character does, their interactions, and how you as a player try to counteract or try to find the means to circumvent any like events that are coming from the opponent, right? Be it like their pre bans, their post bans, the picks that they do, if it's enough to stun lock you whenever you're trying to pick. As a player, we should know which characters would be really good to fight against them, right? So let's bring up the let's bring this up, right? So one really good thing to consider is the current available tools that we have for Epicseven, right? There are a lot of repositories of information. One of the key things that we have to take note of is going to be the main epicseven.onstove.com/en/gg. This is the main source of information we can get, or at least glean, to see any like hero trends or analysis. So as a new player, right? Another thing we could also consider is I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of the support units. I have an existing video thinking about who are pretty good to use
Is it gonna rain?
and what kind of contributions they can do for you as a player, right? But if we ignore those kinds of things and focus on the top units, we get a better sample pool of what characters to use. You may or may not have those units, but it's a really good thing to take note of when it comes to like if the opponent picks it against you, right? So let's see. If we click here in hero analysis, we have the top performing units or the most picked units. By default, this is picked by. I think this is like the most picked for the sorting. So right now, Perfume Biblis has been right on top. Bossarunka, Setsuka, Rinak, Jiras, Lady with Scales, Estelle, LCB. This is surprising. LQC surprising as well. Belayan, Freeren, RB, Zio, Harsetti, Empyrean, Ilinov. RNL surprisingly is set over here. So let's start by. Yeah, it's currently sorted by pick rate. So there's a lot of surprising things in this. So this is really a surprising thing, in my opinion. Some units here that are quite a surprise would be, for example, LCB and LHC. In like a week prior, a few weeks ago, LHC was in the one of the least picked units when it comes to like RTA. If we click over here, let's see. Yeah, 44. She used to be so much lower, I believe. Like if we look here in spring, 75. Oh, she went up by 30. Yeah, she went up by 30 points or 30 for the win rate specifically, but her pick rate increased like so much. The reason being probably is for units such as Setsuka, Boss Arunka, who else? LCB. LCB probably was one of the main things. Who else? I'm guessing as well Arbiter Vildred since he became more of a counter unit. Not necessarily Arnil. Okay, so basically it's just because of some of the counter units that are more prevalent, like the units I've stated before. So if you do have LCB, do take note that LEC is that her main purpose is to deal a lot of damage, and it's really good against units such as, let's see, Who's she good against us? She's good against units where you're not able to target. Since it's more of an AoE unit, right? Her skill tree alone procs so frequently. The main purpose would surely be hitting any units that are stealth or protected by Boss Arunka. But this is surprising in my opinion to see LHC back here on top. LCB is in the same light. You typically pick them against units that have either counterattacks or AoEs. Belians, who else? Setsuka. Oh, yeah. Any AoE units or any units that benefit from having max HP. The changes on LCB allow her to deal injury damage, and it scales based on injury damage dealt, right? Or inflicted, I believe. So this is a good thing to consider. Don't forget that LCB needs her exclusive equipment, which increases damage dealt proportional to injury dealt. So that's a really good thing to consider. Next, if we're going to talk about like perfume and biblis, you know what's surprising here is that Notos is over here just like what 13th, 15th. Notos here being this low is pretty surprising. Like he used to be like one of the units to first, not really first pick. He's one of the highly contested units, but if we're looking here in the statistics, he still has 61% win rate. Relatively speaking, he's still very strong unit. Maybe it's going to be picked like 4 and 5. Let's see. Yeah, it's typically picked like 4 and 5. But if we look here, it's very prevalent the Perfume Biblis and Boss Aronka are the key units to pick up right now for your first few picks, right? If you do have these two available, uh it's in your own prerogative to pick both of them or in your own decision to pick them. Still very strong units. So if we're going to think about who are the key units to pick up or to consider immediately is these Perfume Bilbis, Boss Arunka, uh Lady of the Scales, and then you adjust accordingly, right? Uh I've seen more people pick RNL more and more, but just because of how oppressive they are. However, they're still weak to these two units once again. Okay, next. Renuk is very self-explanatory. The thing that makes her really strong is that her extra attack and extra damage dealt really penetrates to some of the defenses, right? So this is a really oppressive unit. She cycles really fast. She's able to steal stats, and that alone makes her very valuable. I think she started to lose some use cases because of Setsuka, I believe. And now that Perfume Biblis is here, I think that's still going to be the case. So if you're going to plan to pre-ban Perfume Biblis and leave Setsuka open, there's still a possibility wherein you might get destroyed. And that's quite frankly the case. Oh, don't forget, guys, these statistics you can see in the column headers. Good synergy with. These are just based on the win rates relative to the combinations you have. For example, Setsuka plus Perfume Biblis, them together have a relatively high win rate. Okay, let's see some outliers here. Arbiter Vildred. One of the good units after their buff. The buff happened right before the end of E7 Masters. Him being able to counter and deal a lot of damage, his changes along with his S2, his skill tree, and him being able to use like for example, the crescent, right, where he's able to punish or do a coin flip for those counters, makes him a very viable choice. His damage multipliers have seen very relatively high increase, and that's pretty good. Estella has also been seen more and more. I think she's one of the premier damage mitigations. for your team, her being able to punish units that have AoE is very important, in my opinion. And it's very good because it grants like what 40% damage sharing, really impressive. Oh, what else? She has dispel. She can inflict injury. She penetrates defense, and it guarantees a critical hit. So we can just scale by both max HP and crit damage, right? So she's a really good unit to consider in your drafts. So right now, let's look at the units that are just recently released to the game, right? For example, RNL. We could skip Salome. Uh, Obeid Ludwig, and I have the Abyss Fumir. They're relatively in like what? This is around 20. So they're still frequently being picked. And I think it's a good chance to consider them being played. Okay. RNL. One of the more unique units that have been released as of late. Their abilities and their base speed alone is very oppressive. Base speed of 132 is so domineering. Some other things that they do, they have bind, they have death break, extra turns, a lot of extra turns, a lot of follow-up attacks. What else? Their skill tree is really, it's quite strong because it ignores damage sharing, right? And then there's a chance of fear. What else? Erosion is such a good debuff. Depending on the HP loss, they can scale their damage quite hard. And they even have detonate. So that being said, RNL is really strong unit. She's just really weak against Bunny Dominion, right? Setsuka and Perfumer Biblis. Setsuka because of the randomness that she contributes. Perfumer Biblis because of how her interactions work. If RNL skill trees, Perfumer Biblis is just going to punish quite hard. Next, Obeid Ludwig, or lovingly known in the community as Chudwig, is relatively a really good unit, right? How he contributes, him being a mage, right? Let's see. Oh, sorry, he's not a mage. He's a ranger. I keep forgetting. Okay. First, his skill 2, increased defense, really good. On an ally turn, when 10 is or higher, increase CR. So him having like self CR pushing or manipulation allows him to play a bit slower because we could compensate that for going speed. So what happens is that we focus more in increasing your like defensive stats, right? Because he's a defense scaler, you're going to build him more tanky. So you're probably just going like speed set and then having not speed set. You want to go for what's the name? Pursuit set, right? And then pursuit and weakening set because you want to increase the chance of landing debuffs. So the main thing that he contributes is both block and silence. So units that are very reliant on their skill trees or activatable skill 2s is really strong against. The blocks is a really good means of hindering the enemies. So this is a means of like any units that are very heavily favored with like or heavily reliant with buffs. So I'd see this probably going to be used against LHC. Who else? I think he's a really strong unit to consider, right? Currently, he's really strong against Estelle, Boss Arunka, and Belian. Perfumer Biblis, huh? But if we're talking about like straight up win rates, he's really strong against any units that have basically tanky units such as Fallen Cecilia, Empyrean Ilinov, Who else? Bystander Wah. Right. He's really pretty good against those types of units. Uh, I don't have him like I don't use him quite frequently since I'm not too used with his use case. But I do in my champ run. I guess I'll need to consider more in how to use him. And I think if we're going to consider him in the pool, it's a good thing to consider. He doesn't share too much with my units in terms of stat lines. So I think it's an easier way to transition towards using him. Okay, next. Last one for this season would be I have the Abyss Fumir. If you've seen what she does and what she contributes to the team, right? There, it's very oppressive. Very oppressive. The only issue that she has is that, relatively speaking, her win rate has been quite low. I think she suffers against like the typical things like who else? Oh, sorry. She suffers against units like Notos, RNL, Shepherd, uh, Dark DN, right? Genesis Ras, just because of what she contributes to the team. So Pumir is basically a unit wherein we're trying to punish the foremost unit of the enemy team, getting them out of the game completely. So you would typically see this against units like Boss Arunka or any units that have damage share. Or you just want to kidnap a unit entirely and bring them out of the game. That being said, is that because of that thing alone, her purpose is single-handedly going to be played around that aspect. You're just removing a unit out of the question. They have a chance to come back, right? Because the turns is 3 turns, and you as a player have to make sure and ensure that before the deterrence person ends, you need to somehow remove some of the numbers in the enemy team. So because of that, it seems like players are starting to struggle against it. So if we're playing against RNL, I definitely wouldn't pick it. If I'm playing against like Twisted Idol on Kairon, I wouldn't pick her against it or any like counter units, right? So if I boss Arunka's in the team and I remove her to the game and pick Setsuka, Pumir might be a relatively unsafe choice. Next, she's an effectiveness unit. I'm not sure if it's guaranteed, but if Silver Tide Christie is there in the picture, this could be an issue. You might not be able to like debuff the enemy or dispel any of their buffs, right? Who else? I guess for Arbiter Vildred, same light, Perfumer Biblis, same light. It's because of her skill to being AoE is an issue. Who else? Moon Bunny Dominial. I think Moon Bunny Dominial has been getting like she's getting more of a resurgence in her pick rate just because of the amount of like extra turn units as of recent, like Arnel, Wells, Umir, so many units. Renak, of course. But yeah. So that's it for this video, guys. I think there are some things to consider here. Like personally, I have to pick the more surprising units that I have to consider now would be LCB, LHC. I need to pick RNL a bit more. I have to consider picking DN once again. And then Obeid Ludwig and Eye of the Abyss Sumer I need to consider being picked. But if you think about the support units that are available right now, some of the units that I should consider be using during my climb would probably be
Let's bet on who's faster, yeah?
okay, Bunny Dominion L. If you guys don't own Bunny Dominion or she isn't part of your pool or she hasn't been upgraded, be sure to consider Bunny Dominion if you're playing support units. Second, Harseti. Harseti is still a very domineering character. You should consider playing her as well. Next one, Belayan. Belayan is an oppressive unit, really strong against very aggressive units, cleave units, or any units that are heavily reliant on soul burns, such as Free Ren, right? LHC is also part of the support unit pool. Consider using her against units that are heavily counter focused or units that have extra attacks. Ensure that you know which units have those types of things, and you'll see LHC shine a lot. Tori is a really good unit to consider in your support heroes. Untargetable unit does extra damage amounts with her fixed damage, and she stealths, right? So if you're in a setup where she becomes stealth and the enemy has no means of trying to target her, like they're all single target enemies in the right hand side, Tori's a really oppressive unit. Celine, really strong unit still. We don't see her here in the pool immediately. She's around like 25, but she's still a really oppressive oppressive units against characters that have um non-target skills, or no, sorry, skills that are not attacks. So that's pretty much it, guys. I think we have a couple of days before the RTA season ends. We have like what, a day. So I think I should be able to do it quite easily. That's it for this video, guys. Appreciate y'all. Have a nice day.